In the parched wilderness of Paran, a future king and his band of loyal men found themselves far from the comforts of home. This was David, anointed by the prophet Samuel, yet hunted by the reigning king Saul. He was a shepherd boy who had faced a giant, a psalmist whose songs could soothe a troubled soul, and now a leader of a rogue army, living off the land and the goodwill of others. His 600 men, a motley crew of the indebted, the distressed, and the discontented, had pledged their lives to him. They were weary, their faces etched with the harshness of the desert sun, but their loyalty to David was unwavering. They were more than soldiers. They were a brotherhood bound by shared hardship and a common hope for a new kingdom. 4 months they had acted as a protective wall for the shepherds and flocks of a wealthy landowner named Nabal. They guarded them from bandits and predators, ensuring not a single sheep went missing. They asked for nothing in return. Their presence, a silent, steady shield in the rugged landscape. But now, provisions were running low. It was the time of sheep shearing, a season of feasting and celebration, a time when generosity was expected to flow as freely as wine. David, ever the diplomat, saw an opportunity for a peaceful exchange. He chose 10 of his most trusted young men and sent them with a message of respect and a simple request. The messengers traveled from the dusty, rock-strewn hills to the lush pastures of Carmel, where Nabal's estate stood as a testament to his immense wealth. The contrast was stark. Here, there was an abundance of everything. Thousands of sheep and goats, bustling servants, and storehouses overflowing with the bounty of the land. Nabal himself was a man whose character was as coarse as his name, which meant fool. He was harsh, ill-tempered, and drowning in his own arrogance. David's men approached with humility. They delivered their message exactly as David had instructed, bowing low and speaking with the utmost respect. Long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours, they began. They reminded Nabal of the protection they had provided, the security his shepherds had enjoyed because of David's men. They weren't demanding payment. They were asking for a gift, whatever he could spare from his feast for his son, David. Nabal listened, his face contorting into a sneer. "Who is this David?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Who is this son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who are breaking away from their masters. Why should I take my bread and water, and the meat I have slaughtered for my shearers, and give it to men coming from who knows where?" His words were a calculated insult, a public humiliation. He dismissed David as a runaway servant, a nobody. He denied his identity, his legitimacy, and his honor. The messengers stood in stunned silence, the weight of the insult hanging heavy in the air. They turned and left, their mission a complete failure, carrying the venomous words back to their leader. Back in the wilderness! The news reached David like a spark to dry tinder. As his men recounted Nabal's arrogant refusal, a dark rage began to build within him. Every word of disrespect was a blow to his honor and the honor of his men who had served faithfully. Nabal hadn't just refused a request for food. He had scorned the Lord's anointed. David's face, usually filled with thoughtful resolve, hardened into a mask of fury. The psalmist was gone, replaced by the warrior. "Every man, strap on your sword," he commanded, his voice echoing through the camp. The command was swift, the response immediate. 400 men armed themselves, their movements sharp and purposeful. The desert air, once still, now crackled with the promise of violence. David strapped on his own sword, his mind set on a single, brutal purpose: vengeance. He vowed that, by morning, not a single male in Nabal's household would be left alive. Under a sky that was darkening with the approaching night and the storm of his own anger, David led his warriors on the path to Carmel, a march not for provision, but for retribution. But news of this impending disaster traveled faster than David's army. One of Nabal's own servants, who had witnessed the shameful exchange, knew the folly of his master. He understood the gravity of the insult and the certainty of David's retaliation. Fearing for his life and the lives of everyone in the household, he didn't go to the drunken Nabal. He ran to Nabal's wife, Abigail. Abigail was everything her husband was not. The scripture describes her as both intelligent and beautiful. She was discerning, wise, and possessed a quiet strength that commanded respect. When the servant poured out the story, detailing her husband's foolishness and the imminent danger, Abigail didn't panic. She listened, she understood, and she acted. With incredible speed and efficiency, she gathered a generous offering. 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, bushels of roasted grain, clusters of raisins, and cakes of figs. It was a gift fit for a king. A powerful counterstatement to her husband's stinginess. Without a word, to Nabal, who was already deep into his feast and drinking heavily. She had the provisions loaded onto donkeys and set off to intercept David's path. She rode with urgency, her heart pounding with the knowledge that the fate of her entire household rested on her shoulders. As she rounded a mountain bend, she saw them, David and his 400 men, armed and marching with deadly intent. Her moment had come. Without hesitation, she dismounted and fell on her face before David, bowing to the ground. She took the blame entirely upon herself. "Upon me, my lord, upon me, let this iniquity be," she pleaded, her voice a balm against his searing anger. She called her husband the fool that he was, urging David not to take him seriously. But her appeal went deeper than a simple apology. It was a masterful display of wisdom and faith. She spoke to the king within David, reminding him of his divine destiny. She framed her intervention not as her own doing, but as the Lord's, a divine act to keep David from the guilt of shedding innocent blood and avenging himself with his own hand. "The Lord has restrained you from coming to bloodshed," she declared, her words shifting the focus from his anger to God's purpose. She spoke of his future kingdom, prophesying that the Lord would establish a sure dynasty for him because he fought the Lord's battles. This act of vengeance, she wisely argued, would be a stain on his future reign, a staggering of heart that would haunt him when he finally ascended the throne. As Abigail spoke, a transformation occurred. The sincerity of her words, the humility of her posture, and the undeniable wisdom of her counsel pierced through David's rage. The tense muscles in his jaw relaxed. His grip on his sword loosened. He looked at this woman, kneeling before him, offering not just provisions but a path back to his own integrity. The storm inside him began to calm. Light, it seemed, was breaking through the clouds of his fury. He saw the truth in her words. She had saved him from himself, from making a terrible mistake that would have had lasting consequences. "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me," David exclaimed, his voice filled with gratitude and relief. "Blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you, who have kept me this day from blood guilt." He accepted her gift, her plea, and her wisdom. He lowered his sword, a symbolic gesture of choosing mercy over wrath, peace over bloodshed. He sent her away in peace, assuring her that her household was safe. Abigail had not only saved her family, she had saved David's conscience and preserved the honor of his future kingdom. Abigail returned home to find Nabal feasting like a king, completely oblivious, his heart merry with wine. Wisely, she waited. She told him nothing until the morning, when the wine had worn off. As she recounted the events of the previous day, how close he and his entire household had come to annihilation and how she had saved them, the reality of his folly struck him. The scripture says, his heart died within him and he became like a stone. He was seized by a stroke, utterly shaken and paralyzed by fear. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal and he died. His wealth, his pride, and his arrogance had brought him to ruin. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he praised God once more, recognizing the divine justice that had unfolded. He saw it as confirmation that vengeance belongs to the Lord alone. In the aftermath, David did not forget the woman whose wisdom had so profoundly impacted him. He sent for Abigail and asked her to be his wife. And Abigail, honored and respected, became part of David's journey. In the quiet light of a new day, we see David standing alone at sunrise, overlooking the vast, silent land. The warrior's anger has been replaced by a king's humility. he has been reminded of a crucial lesson. That true strength is not just the power to destroy, but the wisdom to show restraint. It's a lesson in leadership, faith, and the profound impact one wise and courageous person can have on the course of history. In the face of insult, he nearly chose a path of ruinous revenge, but through a divine encounter, he was guided back to the path of righteousness, emerging not weaker, but stronger, more humbled, and better prepared for the crown that awaited him. Thank you for watching. This story is a powerful reminder that in moments of anger, wisdom and humility can be our greatest guides. If you found this story inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. We'll see ya in the next video.